Set It Down, The Art of Letting Go. For Now, by David Russo. You don't have to untangle every thought. You don't need closure on every feeling, every memory, every possibility. Sometimes, all you need is to put it down. Introduction. There's a subtle force shaping your days, almost invisible but powerful. Most of the time, you don't even notice it. It happens when your workday ends, but your mind keeps spinning. When you're at the dinner table, yet replaying emails in your head. When you're physically at work, but mentally reliving the weekend you're already missing. When a single remark lingers, echoing louder and more complete with every mental replay. You move on. Your mind doesn't. It carries. It carries what's already happened. It carries what could come next. It carries what you wish you had said, what you think you should have done, what you're anticipating, and what you're not ready to release. Gradually, without realizing it, life shifts from the present to everything else. This isn't a failure on your part. It's simply your mind doing what it's built to do. It tries to protect you, prepare you, and safeguard what matters. Unfinished business feels urgent, important, necessary. But this comes at a cost. When your mind is elsewhere, so are you. You miss conversations because you're finishing one in your head. You miss moments because you're rehearsing ones that haven't happened. You carry tension into spaces it doesn't belong and sometimes even carry joy in ways that pull you out of the now. You're not just remembering or imagining, you're holding on. There's a story about two monks walking together. They come upon a river where a woman cannot cross. One monk lifts her, carries her across, and gently sets her down. They continue walking in silence. Hours later, the second monk asks, "We aren't supposed to touch women. Why did you carry her?" The first monk responds, "I set her down hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" We often grasp the lesson immediately, but understanding is different from living it, because most of the time, we carry things far beyond the moment and sometimes, even before it arrives. We carry conversations, we carry expectations, we carry imagined futures and rewritten pasts. We carry moments that are over and moments that haven't arrived. Life keeps repeating this pattern. This guide isn't about discarding everything forever. It's not about detachment, indifference, or numbing your emotions. It's not about pretending anything matters less. It's about something more practical and deeply human. It's about learning to set things down, even temporarily, to let a thought exist without chasing it, to let a moment pass without replaying it, to let the future wait until it comes, to care without caring. You don't need to fix everything right now. You don't need closure for every feeling. You don't need the perfect response, plan, or timing. Sometimes, all you need is to set it down, not forever, just long enough to be present. Chapter 1. The Weight You Can't See. Not all weight is visible. Some of the heaviest things we carry exist only in the mind. They don't show on your body, your posture, or your surroundings, but you feel them all the same. A moment, a remark, a glance, a possibility. Once they arrive, they don't always leave when the event ends. You finish a conversation, yet a part of it lingers. Something you said or didn't say returns to your mind repeatedly, growing more detailed, more consuming each time. Hours later, you're no longer in that conversation, but your mind still is. This is invisible weight. At first, it doesn't feel heavy. Your brain frames it as useful and attempt to solve, understand, or prepare. It feels productive. But there's a difference between thinking and caring. Thinking is intentional. It has purpose, context, and an endpoint. Caring is automatic. It follows you everywhere, even when you don't want it to. You can be walking, eating, talking, then suddenly, your mind drifts back to the same unresolved moment, looping endlessly, and just like that, part of your attention vanishes. Not because something is happening, but because something did or might. This is the unseen weight. It shows up after work, when your body is home, but your mind remains at your desk. It lingers after joy, too, keeping you from fully settling into good memories. Even happiness can feel heavy when held too tightly. It shows up for future moments as well, upcoming events, difficult conversations, opportunities you anticipate. Your mind races ahead, imagining outcomes, rehearsing scenarios, and in doing so, leaves the present behind. This constant tension may not be crushing, but it's persistent. You might not even call it stress. You might barely notice it, yet it affects your attention, your calm, your ability to fully exist. The tricky part, much of what you carry feels necessary. Work matters, relationships matter, the future matters. There's nothing wrong with thinking about these things. The problem is knowing when to stop. Your mind doesn't naturally release. It clings, just in case it's still needed. Just in case letting go means losing control. But holding on doesn't always give you control. It often pulls you away from where you actually are. Over time, this state of partial distraction becomes familiar. Being fully present starts to feel strange. This chapter is about silencing your thoughts. That's neither realistic nor required. It's about noticing the weight, recognizing when something has stayed longer than necessary, distinguishing thoughts that serve you from those that simply follow you, because you can't set something down if you don't see that you're holding it. And that's usually where the journey begins. Chapter 2. The mind's habit of holding on. Your mind isn't out to frustrate you. It's trying to help. Every lingering thought, replayed memory, or imagined future exists because your brain is fulfilling its purpose, remembering what matters, anticipating what's ahead, and keeping you safe from mistakes. Holding on feels like protection. Replay a conversation to do better next time. Rehearse an event to avoid surprises. Relive a joyful memory to hold onto it. This instinct begins early and becomes automatic. The mind flags certain moments as significant not always consciously, but instinctively, and, rather than letting them pass, it keeps them alive, hoping repetition will resolve them. But most thoughts aren't solved by looping. They simply grow louder. A single moment can stretch across an entire evening. A brief exchange can echo for days, not because it's still happening but because your mind hasn't released it. Sometimes revisiting helps, but often, it doesn't. The mind struggles to distinguish when something truly needs attention from when it's just familiar. It treats uncertainty like a problem to fix. Unfinished emotions become tasks. The future becomes a puzzle to control. So it holds on, not from necessity but because it's familiar. You see it in small, almost invisible ways. You reread a message, thinking about tone. You replay a meeting, assessing your impact. You anticipate an upcoming moment, rehearsing details that don't yet exist. Your mind seeks closure, looping endlessly, but not every loop needs to close now. Some things are meant to remain open for a while. Some conversations don't require analysis. Some future moments don't need constant rehearsal. Some experiences are meaningful without being carried around. Your mind defaults to keep going, and that's how the habit forms, not in grand gestures, but in repeated small patterns. Each thought followed reinforces the next. Each mental loop strengthens the habit of holding on. Over time, holding on starts to feel like thinking, like being responsible, like being aware. But awareness isn't attachment. Awareness notices a thought. Attachment keeps it. Awareness lets it pass. Attachment drags it along. Attachment doesn't feel optional. It feels inevitable. You get lost in thoughts before you realize it. Minutes slip by, hours sometimes. Then you notice you're not here. You've been elsewhere, in the past, the future, or a mental scenario that doesn't exist. This is the habit of holding on. And habits don't shift by force, not by resistance, but by seeing that holding on is a habit and habits can be changed. Your mind will always reach, but it doesn't have to cling. Chapter 3. The After-Work Mind. There's a moment at the end of the workday that feels like a boundary. You shut your laptop, you leave the building, you turn off notifications. On the outside, the day is over, but inside, something keeps going. A conversation replays. An unfinished task lingers. An email you sent hours ago suddenly feels like it needs revisiting. You tell yourself you're done, but your mind hasn't caught up. This is the after-work mind. It's the part of you that doesn't recognize transitions, just because your schedule says so. It doesn't operate on clocks or calendars. It operates on completion, and most days, nothing feels fully complete. There's always one more thing you could have said, one more thing you could have done, one more thing waiting for tomorrow. So, instead of stopping, your mind keeps the day alive. You might be sitting at home, physically removed from your work environment, but mentally you're still there, walking through the same moments, adjusting details, preparing for what's next. It doesn't always feel stressful. Sometimes it just feels like background noise, a quiet, constant stream of thoughts that follow you from one part of your life into another. But even when it's subtle, it has an effect, because while your mind is still at work, you're not fully present where you are. You're half listening in conversations, half engaged in what's in front of you, half resting, and rest doesn't really happen in halves. This is why you can feel tired even after stepping away. Not physically, but mentally. Not because you did too much, but because you never fully stopped. Your body left, your mind didn't. Part of the reason this happens is that work rarely provides clean endings. Tasks roll over, projects evolve, conversations pause rather than conclude. There's no clear moment where everything is finished and you can confidently say, "That's done." So, your mind fills in the gap. It keeps thinking in order to create a sense of closure that doesn't actually exist. It replays the day to make it feel more complete, even if nothing new is being solved. But closure isn't always something you find. Sometimes, it's something you choose. The shift from work to the rest of your life isn't just about stopping tasks. It's about allowing unfinished things to remain unfinished without carrying them with you. That doesn't mean ignoring responsibility. It doesn't mean avoiding what needs to be done. It means recognizing that not everything needs your attention right now. You can return to it tomorrow. You can think about it when you're back in that space. You can pick it up again when it's time to carry it. But in this moment, you can set it down. The difficulty is that your mind resists this. It equates letting go with losing control. It tells you that if you stop thinking about something, you might forget it, miss something, fall behind. So, it keeps going just in case. But consider this. Has replaying your workday over and over truly given you control? Or has it just extended the work into every other part of your life? There's a difference between being responsible and being unable to disengage. One is intentional, the other is automatic, and the after-work mind is almost always automatic. Breaking this pattern doesn't require a dramatic change. It doesn't require you to force your mind into silence, or pretend that work doesn't matter. It starts with something simpler, a pause, a moment where you acknowledge the workday is over, even if everything isn't finished, a moment where you notice the thoughts trying to follow you, and instead of engaging with them, you let them be there without picking them up. They might still appear. That's normal. But appearing is different from carrying. You don't have to push them away. You don't have to solve them. You just don't have to take them with you. Because the goal isn't to erase work from your mind. It's to give your mind permission to leave it behind if only for a while. And when you do, something subtle begins to shift. Your attention returns. Your presence deepens. Your rest becomes real. Not because your life is perfectly balanced or completely under control, but because, for this moment, you've chosen not to carry what doesn't belong here. You've stepped out of your workday, and this time, your mind came with you. Chapter 4. When good moments become distractions. It's easy to recognize when stress follows you. It's harder to notice when happiness does. A great weekend, a meaningful conversation, a moment where everything felt light, easy, and exactly as it should be. These are the experiences you want to hold on to. The ones you replay not because they trouble you, but because they felt good, because they meant something. So, you revisit them, on your commute, at your desk, in between tasks. You think about what happened, what was said, how it felt. You retrace the details, trying to stay connected to something that has already passed. At first, it feels harmless, even comforting, but slowly, something begins to shift. The present moment starts to feel less interesting by comparison. Work feels dull next to the weekend. Routine feels flat next to excitement. Now feels like something to get through, rather than something to be in. Not because now is bad, but because your mind is somewhere else. This is the quieter side of holding on. We often think that distraction comes from stress or worrying, but it can just as easily come from pleasure, from not wanting to let go of something that felt better than what's in front of you. And in that way, even good moments can become a kind of weight, not because they're negative, but because you're still carrying them. There's nothing wrong with remembering something meaningful. There's nothing wrong with reflecting on an experience that mattered to you. The problem isn't the memory. It's the attachment to staying in it. When you replay a moment once, you're remembering. When you replay it over and over, you're trying to return, but you can't return. The moment is complete, whether it felt like enough or not, and the more you try to hold on to it, the more it pulls you away from what's happening now. You might notice this in subtle ways. You compare your current day to something that just passed. You feel a quiet resistance to what you're doing because it doesn't match what you'd rather be doing. You find yourself mentally stepping back into a memory instead of engaging with the present, and without realizing it, you begin to divide your attention. Part of you is here, part of you is still there. The challenge is that this doesn't feel like a problem. It feels like appreciation, like holding onto something good, like staying connected to what matters. But appreciation doesn't require repetition, and meaning doesn't disappear when a moment ends. In fact, constantly revisiting something can take away from what made it meaningful in the first place. It turns something natural into something you're trying to preserve, and preservation is different from presence. Presence allows something to happen fully, and then lets it settle. Preservation tries to keep it alive, even when it's over. The shift isn't about forcing yourself to move on or pretending something didn't matter. It's about trusting that it did and that it still does. Even without your constant attention, you don't lose a good moment by letting it go. You honor it by allowing it to be complete. And when you do, something opens up. The present moment becomes available again, not as a replacement for what was but as something of its own, something that doesn't need to compete with the past, something you can actually experience instead of compare. Because life doesn't happen in the moments you revisit. It happens in the ones you're in, and sometimes, the only thing standing between you and the present is something good you haven't set down yet. Chapter 5. The comeback you never gave. It happens quickly. Someone says something maybe careless, maybe sharp, maybe just unexpected. You feel it, but the moment moves on before you can respond. The conversation shifts, or ends, or you walk away. At the time, you say nothing, but later, the words arrive, clearer, stronger, more precise, the perfect response, and now, it has nowhere to go. So, it stays with you. You replay the moment, inserting your new response into the old scene. You imagine how it would have landed, how it would have changed things, how it would have felt to say it. Each time, it becomes more refined, more satisfying, more complete. But it's still unfinished, because the moment has already passed. This is one of the most persistent forms of mental weight. The conversation that continues after it's over. Unlike other thoughts, this one feels active, alive. It carries emotion, frustration, embarrassment, defensiveness, even a sense of injustice. It's not just about what was said, it's about what should have been said. And your mind doesn't like that gap, so it tries to close it. It replays the scene. It edits your response. It prepares you for the next time you see that person. It tells you this is useful, that you're learning, improving, getting it right for the future. And sometimes, that's true, but most of the time, something else is happening. You're carrying a moment that no longer exists. You're trying to resolve something that cannot be resolved in the same way, because the opportunity has already passed. The conversation you're rehearsing ain't real anymore. It's a version of the past that your mind is trying to rewrite, and the more you engage with it, the more real it feels. You might find yourself waiting for the next encounter, thinking about what you'll say when you see them again, holding onto that response as if it needs to be delivered, as if the moment is still open. But in many cases, it isn't. And even if you do see that person again, the context will be different. The energy will have shifted. What felt urgent in your mind may not fit the moment when it actually arrives. Yet you carry it anyway, because letting it go feels like letting it slide, like losing your chance, like accepting something you didn't agree with. So, you hold onto the comeback not just as words, but as a sense of unfinished business. This is where the difficulty lies. Letting go of these moments doesn't mean you didn't care. It doesn't mean what happened was acceptable. It doesn't mean you shouldn't speak up in the future. It simply means recognizing that this version of the moment is over. You can still choose how you want to show up next time. You can still decide what matters to you, what you would say, how you would respond. But you don't have to keep replaying what already happened in order to do that. There's a difference between learning from a moment and living inside it. Learning is brief. It's clear. It gives you something and then releases you. Living inside it is repetitive. It loops. It keeps you tied to something that no longer needs your attention. The comeback you never gave can feel important because it represents something deeper, a desire to be understood, respected, or heard. And those things do matter. But carrying the moment doesn't guarantee any of them. In fact, it often takes you further away from them by keeping you stuck in a version of the past that can't change. The shift isn't about dismissing what happened. It's about allowing the moment to be complete. Even if it didn't end the way you wanted, you can acknowledge it. You can take what you need from it. You can decide how you'll respond differently in the future. And then you can set it down, not because it didn't matter, but because carrying it any longer doesn't help you. The words came. The moment passed. You don't have to keep holding both. Chapter 6. Living in the next moment. There's a moment coming. You know it's coming because you've already been there. Over and over again in your mind. The meeting, the conversation, the event you've been waiting for, or the one you've been quietly dreading. It hasn't happened yet, but it already feels familiar. You've imagined how it will start, how it might unfold, what could go wrong, what you'll say, how you'll respond. You've stepped into the future so many times that it begins to feel like you're preparing for something real. And in a way, you are, but you're also leaving something behind. The present moment. Anticipation is natural. It's part of how you plan, how you care, how you prepare for what matters. Your mind moves ahead to reduce uncertainty, to give you a sense of control over what hasn't happened yet. But anticipation has a threshold. There's a point where preparation ends and preoccupation begins. At first, you think about the upcoming moment occasionally, then more often. Then it becomes a kind of background presence, always there, quietly pulling your attention forward. You're in one place, but mentally you're already somewhere else. You might be in the middle of your day, but part of you is already in tomorrow's meeting. You might be having a conversation, but you're also rehearsing another one that hasn't happened yet. You might be trying to relax, but your mind keeps returning to what's ahead, as if it can't afford to forget. And the more important the moment feels, the harder it is to leave it alone, because your mind tells you that thinking about it is helping. If you go over it enough times, you'll be ready. If you consider every angle, nothing will surprise you. If you imagine the worst, you'll know how to handle it. But this kind of thinking doesn't always lead to clarity. Often, it leads to noise. You don't just imagine what might happen, you imagine multiple versions, multiple outcomes, multiple reactions, some realistic, some unlikely, some completely out of proportion. And instead of feeling prepared, you start to feel scattered, because you're not preparing for one moment. You're trying to prepare for all of them, and none of them are actually happening yet. This is the paradox of living in the next moment. The more time you spend there, the less grounded you feel here, and the less effective your preparation actually becomes. Because real moments don't unfold the way imagined ones do. They shift, they respond, they evolve in real time, and the only way to meet them fully is to arrive in them when they actually happen, not hours or days before. There's also something else that gets lost when your mind is always ahead. Your ability to experience what's in front of you without it being filtered through what's coming next. Everything becomes a lead-up, a stepping stone, a waiting period, something to get through until the real moment arrives. But life doesn't organize itself that way. The moments you're rushing past are not placeholders. They are not less important. They are not separate from what's coming next. They are part of it. And when you're not fully in them, you're not fully anywhere. Letting go of the next moment doesn't mean ignoring it. It means trusting that you can meet it when it arrives. You can prepare when it's time to prepare. You can think about it when you choose to think about it. You can show up for it fully when it's actually happening. But you don't have to live there in advance. You don't have to carry it with you into every other moment of your day. Because when you do, you're not just anticipating the future. You're missing the present. And the present is the only place where anything real can happen. The next moment will come, whether you think about it constantly or not. The question is, will you still be here when it does? Or will you have already spent all your time there before it even began? Chapter 7. The myth of I'll relax after. There's a quiet agreement many people make with themselves. I'll relax after this is done, after the project, after the deadline, after the conversation, After things calm down, it sounds reasonable, responsible, even. You focus now so you can rest later. You push through what needs to be done, trusting that relief is waiting on the other side. But there's a problem with after. There's always another one. You finish one task, and another appears. One deadline leads to the next. One responsibility gives way to something else that needs your attention. The conditions for rest keep shifting just slightly out of reach. So, relaxation becomes something postponed, not denied, just delayed, and delayed again. Over time, this creates a subtle pattern. You begin to treat the present moment as something to move through rather than something to be in. Your attention stays fixed on what's next, because that's where you've placed your sense of relief. But when next arrives, it doesn't feel the way you expected, because your mind hasn't learned how to stop. It has learned how to continue. You might notice this at the end of a long day. You finally have time to yourself, no immediate tasks, no urgent responsibilities. This was supposed to be the moment you relax, but your mind doesn't settle. It searches, it looks for something else to think about, something else to plan, something else to carry. It replays the day, it anticipates tomorrow, it fills the space you were waiting for, not because you don't want to relax, but because you've practiced being occupied. The habit of "I'll relax after" trains your mind to stay engaged, to stay alert, to stay slightly tense. It conditions you to believe that rest is something you earn only when everything is finished. But everything is rarely finished, and even when it is, your mind doesn't always recognize it. This is where the myth begins to break. Relaxation is something that automatically happens when your schedule clears. It's something you have to allow. And allowing it requires a different kind of skill, not productivity, not planning, not problem solving, but the ability to set things down without needing them to be complete. This is difficult because it goes against what feels natural. Your mind wants closure. It wants resolution. It wants to tie things up before it lets go. But life doesn't always offer clean endings, and waiting for them can keep you in a constant state of postponement. So the question becomes, can you relax before everything is done? Can you pause while things are still unfinished? Can you be present even when there's more ahead? Can you let a task exist without carrying it into every other moment? This doesn't mean neglecting what matters. It means recognizing that rest and presence are not rewards at the end of a long chain of completion. They are choices available within it, small ones. At first, a moment where you stop thinking about what's next. A moment where you notice where you are without comparing it to what's ahead. A moment where you allow yourself to be here, even if there are still things waiting for you later. These moments don't solve everything. They don't finish your tasks or remove your responsibilities, but they give your mind something it doesn't get from constant motion, a break from carrying, and that break changes how everything else feels. Because when you stop postponing rest, even briefly, you begin to see that it was never as far away as it seemed. It was just hidden behind a condition, after. But after keeps moving, and if you keep waiting for it, you may never arrive. The shift is simple, but not easy. Instead of asking, when can I relax? You begin asking, can I set this down? Just for now. Even in the middle of things, even before you're finished, even when there's more to do. Because sometimes, the only thing standing between you and a moment of calm is the belief that you haven't earned it yet. Chapter 8. The practice of setting it down. Up to this point, you've seen the pattern. How your mind holds on. How it carries moments forward and backward. How it fills space with unfinished thoughts, even when nothing is happening. Understanding this is important, but understanding alone doesn't change the experience. Because in the moment when a thought appears, when a feeling lingers, when your mind starts to follow something, you don't need more explanation. You need something you can do. This is where the practice begins. Not a technique to control your mind, not a method to eliminate thoughts, but a way to relate to them differently, a way to set them down. The first thing to recognize is that letting go is not an action in the way you might expect. It's not something you force. It's not pushing a thought away or trying to make it disappear. In fact, trying to force it usually has the opposite effect. The more you resist a thought, the more attention you give it. The more you try to suppress it, the more it insists on staying. Setting something down is quieter than that. It starts with noticing. A thought appears about work, about a conversation, about something ahead. Normally, you would follow it automatically. You would step into it, build on it, continue it. But instead, you pause. You notice. This is something my mind has picked up. That moment of noticing is small, but it changes everything, because now, there's a space between you and the thought. And in that space, you have a choice. Not whether the thought exists, but whether you carry it. This is where many people get stuck, because the instinct is to do something dramatic, to clear the mind, to replace the thought, to fix whatever feels unfinished. But the practice is simpler than that. You let the thought be there, and you don't go with it. You don't push it away. You don't engage it. You don't build on it. You allow it to exist without turning it into a place you have to go. At first, this can feel unnatural. Your mind is used to movement, to following, to continuing. Not engaging can feel like ignoring something important, like leaving something undone, but that's the point. Not everything needs to be done right now. Some thoughts can wait. Some feelings can settle on their own. Some moments don't need your immediate attention to resolve. You can return to them later when it's time, when it's useful, when you choose to. But right now, you're practicing something different. You're practicing not caring. It can help to make this concrete. You might imagine placing the thought down somewhere, not getting rid of it, just setting it aside. Or you might simply acknowledge it. Not now, not never, not ignored, just not now. And then, gently, you bring your attention back to what's in front of you. Your surroundings, your breath, the person you're with, the task you're doing. Nothing complicated, nothing forced, just a return. This will not happen once. You will have to do this again and again. The same thought may come back. The same loop may try to pull you in. That doesn't mean you're doing it wrong, it means you're noticing it sooner. Each time, the practice is the same. Notice, pause, choose not to carry, return. Over time, something begins to shift. The thoughts don't necessarily disappear, but they lose their weight. They become something that passes through, rather than something that stays with you. And in that shift, you begin to experience moments differently. Not because your life is simpler, or your mind is empty, but because you're no longer bringing everything with you into every moment. You're allowing things to exist without holding onto them. You're setting them down, and in doing so, you create space. Space to focus. Space to rest. Space to actually be where you are. This is not a one-time decision. It's a practice. A quiet, repeatable choice you make throughout your day. And the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes not to hold on, but to let things be. Not to carry everything, but to set it down when it doesn't belong here. Chapter 9. Picking it back up when it matters. Letting go temporarily doesn't mean leaving everything behind forever. In fact, some things are worth carrying. Some thoughts, conversations, responsibilities, and emotions need attention. The skill isn't in ignoring them. It's in knowing when to carry them and when to set them down. After all, not every thought or feeling is meant to pass through. Some require your focus, your energy, your action, a task at work, an important conversation, a relationship that needs care. These are things you will need to pick up again. The question is how and when. The first step is discernment. You learn to notice the difference between thoughts that demand action now and those that are simply looping in your mind for no productive reason. One carries weight because it matters. The other carries weight because you're accustomed to holding on. For example, a work problem may follow you home, replaying in your head. Setting it down doesn't mean forgetting it. It means you choose not to solve it until you're back at your desk. When you pick it up again at the right time, your mind is sharper, your energy is focused, and your attention is fully available. Similarly, a difficult conversation with a friend may linger in your mind. Letting it rest temporarily doesn't mean avoiding it. It means giving yourself the space to approach it with clarity and presence, rather than emotion-driven replay. When you pick it up again, you are intentional, not reactive. There's also an important principle here. Caring isn't inherently bad, but caring unnecessarily is. Holding onto things when it's not their time to be held creates stress, distraction, and fatigue. By contrast, picking them up with purpose transforms weight into agency. This chapter is about balance, about understanding that letting go and picking up are not opposites. They are two sides of the same practice. You learn to set things down without abandoning them, to pause without ignoring them, and to re-engage when it matters. It's a skill of timing, a skill of choice, a skill of mindfulness applied to the practical realities of life. When you set something down, it doesn't vanish. It waits, it exists, and when the moment comes, you can carry it forward not as a burden, but as something meaningful that you are fully present to handle. This is the difference between being lost in your thoughts and using your thoughts intentionally, between being dragged by your mind and walking with it, between carrying everything everywhere and carrying what matters at the right time. Letting go temporarily, in avoidance it's preparation, and picking things up when it matters is the way you live with presence, focus, and balance, moment by moment. It's both freedom and responsibility, and learning that balance is at the heart of living fully. Chapter 10, The Monk Who Keeps Walking. The story of the two monks is often told as a single moment. One monk carries a woman across the river, sets her down, and continues on his way. The other monk is left puzzled, still holding the moment in his mind hours later. But the story doesn't end there, because life is full of rivers, full of people to meet, words to say, responsibilities to manage, memories to carry, and moments that linger. And just like the second monk, we often find ourselves walking with things that no longer belong to us. Every day presents a new river, a conversation that left its mark, a worrying about the future, a joyful memory that still pulls you backward. Each of these is a moment that could be carried or could be set down. The monk who keeps walking shows us that the practice of letting go is ongoing. It isn't a single act of discipline or insight. It is repeated hundreds, sometimes thousands, of times throughout life. Every thought you hold longer than necessary is a small river you are carrying across, long after it has served its purpose. And yet, the act of setting something down even briefly changes everything. The first monk didn't stop thinking. He didn't erase the experience. He simply chose to leave it where it belonged. He kept walking, present to the journey ahead, unburdened by what no longer needed to travel with him. We are rarely the first monk. More often, we are the second, watching others move on, while we replay moments over and over in our minds. Sometimes it's a work problem. Sometimes it's a memory we cherish. Sometimes it's an imagined conversation or the anticipation of what's next. The question is not whether we will carry things. We will. The question is for how long. Each time we notice that we are still holding something, we have a choice: continue carrying it, or set it down. Not forever, necessarily, but long enough to return to life fully present. This chapter reminds us that the story repeats. Life continually presents opportunities to carry and to release. The practice of temporary letting go is the path that allows us to keep walking, moment by moment, river by river. To live fully, we don't need to erase our experiences. We need only to remember the first monk, to notice when we are still carrying, and then, consciously, set it down. And in doing so, we create space for the next step, the next encounter, the next river. Unburdened and fully present, life is a series of rivers. The monks show us the way. Walk lightly, carry what matters, and let the rest go for now. Conclusion: walking lightly through life. By now, you've seen the pattern that shapes so much of our daily experience, the tendency to carry things long after their moment has passed, or before it has even arrived. You've recognized the weight of unfinished conversations, lingering memories, anticipatory thoughts, and the after that never seems to come. You've noticed how these invisible burdens pull your attention away from where you actually are, leaving you only partly present in your own life. The good news is that carrying everything is a habit, and like all habits, it can be changed. The practice isn't about emptying your mind or ignoring responsibility. It's about learning the rhythm of temporary letting go, the ability to set things down when it isn't their time, to be fully present in the moments that are, and to pick them up again intentionally when they truly matter. Life will always give you more rivers to cross. There will always be unfinished thoughts, future plans, or joyful memories that tempt you to carry them farther than necessary. But each time you pause, notice, and choose to let go even briefly, you reclaim a small but powerful freedom. You create space for clarity, for rest, for presence, and for genuine engagement with the world around you. The monks teach us the simplicity of this truth. One carries only what is necessary and sets down what is not. The second monk reminds us how easy it is to keep holding on long after we should have let go. We are both of them at different times in our lives, but the choice to notice and release is always ours. Walking lightly through life doesn't mean ignoring what matters. It means discerning what truly requires your attention and what does not. It means understanding that some things are meant to pass through, some to be paused, and some to be carried with intention. It is in this balance that peace, focus, and joy arise, not by removing life's weight, but by learning when and how to bear it. So the next time a thought, a memory, or an anticipation starts to pull you away from the present, remember, you can set it down. You don't have to carry everything everywhere you go. You can pause. You can breathe. You can choose to be here, fully, now. And in that choice, life becomes lighter, not empty, not absent, but fully alive. Step forward, river by river, moment by moment, carrying only what matters and letting the rest go for now.